Hi, my name is Ann Phelim.
And I'm Phelim Scoop.
And welcome to the Ann Phelim Scoop.
It's week 44, that's 11 months of the 2-week flatten the curve lockdown when the government said it was just 2 weeks to kill the virus. We're all in this together, just trust us. And here we are 11 months later, except in California, the breaking news. Last week we were told that the world was going to end, that people were literally dying in the streets, bring out your dead, bring out your dead. There was no ambulances, no hospital beds. But now Governor Newsom, 4 days after Joe Biden's inauguration, has decided that we should all lift the lockdown. We'll be talking about that later, this blatant politicisation of science. It's a disgrace, and we'll be coming on to that later. What else is on the show, Anne?
And Friday was 48 years since the Roe v. Wade decision, and President Trump had designated Friday as National Sanctity of Life Day. And we're going to be talking to David Daleiden later in the programme today.
Remind people who David Daleiden is.
And David Daleiden, who is the undercover journalist who exposed the Planned Parenthood executives negotiating the sale and the price of baby parts.
Yes. And
David has a particular history with Kamala Harris, now Vice President of the United States. And he'll be telling us about what we can expect from a Biden-Harris administration.
Yes.
And he's also going to talk to us about the legacy of the 48 years since Roe v. Wade became law. And also in Joe Biden's first days, we'll be looking at a lesson that's been learned by some union leaders have gotten a political education that really they oughtn't to need, but that they have gotten in a very awful kind of way. Mm-hmm. And remember all the talk about civility and being nice to everyone and everyone just getting along? We've a look at 3 celebrities and how they dealt with the transition, the peaceful transition, yes, and the unity that everyone was talked about. We'll have a look at what they have to say. And we have some COVID news, both crazy and tragic.
Yeah. And we'll be talking to Yvonne about social media. So you want to get off Facebook, you want to get off Twitter, where do you go? What's there? What's available? What's good? What's not? Yvonne will be giving us, Yvonne Dean Bailey, who works with us, will be giving us all the rundown. And news about our great friend Mark Stein.
Very good news.
The hockey stick wars may be coming to an end. Mm-hmm. We never know. With a humiliating defeat for climate change warrior Michael Mann.
But first, as we said, last Friday was National Sanctity of Life Day, which was declared and proclaimed by President Trump. And in one of the final things he did, he declared that a national holiday. Of course, we also remember that was 48. It marks 48 years since Roe v. Wade. But I love what the proclamation from the White House read, which I'll read if you don't mind. Every human life is a gift to the world, whether born or unborn, young or old, healthy or sick. Every person is made in the holy image of God. The Almighty Creator gives unique talents, beautiful dreams, and a great purpose to every person. On National Sanctity of Human Life Day, we celebrate the wonder of human existence and renew our resolve to build a culture of life where every person of every age is protected, valued, and cherished. That's just part of the proclamation. Yeah. But we're going to go over right now and talk to David Daleiden, who is a hero of journalism, by the way, an undercover journalist.
He should be winning journalist awards. So let's go over, we recorded that interview just before we came on air. Let's go over, talk to him now.
We are very lucky to be joined right now by David Daleiden. David went undercover for 2.5 years and filmed Planned Parenthood executives haggling over the price of baby parts.
How much of a difference can that actually make if you know what's expected or what we need versus?
It makes a huge difference. I'd say a lot of people want liver, mm-hmm, and for that reason, most providers will do this case under ultrasound guidance, mm-hmm, so they'll know where they're putting their forceps. Kind of rate-limiting step of the procedure is calvarium. Calvarium, the head is basically the biggest part. Most of the other stuff can come out intact.
Right.
It's very rare to have a patient that doesn't have enough dilation to evacuate all the other
to bring the body cavity out, exactly, intact and all that.
So then you're just kind of cognizant of where you put your breast first. You try to intentionally go above and below the thorax so that, we've been very good at getting hard, long liver, because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see if I can get it intact. And with the calvarium, in general, some people will actually try to change the presentation so that it's not a vertex, because when it's a vertex presentation, you never have enough dilation at the beginning of the case unless you have a real huge amount of dilation to deliver an intact calvariate. So if you do it starting from the breech presentation, there's dilation that happens as the case goes on, and often the last you can evacuate an intact calvariate at the end. So I mean, there are certainly steps that can be taken.
So they can convert to breech, for example, at the start of the...
Exactly. Under ultrasound guidance, they can just change the presentation.
A 3 or 4 paragraph proposal, which I will then take to Laurel and others in our organization to see if we want to pursue this. And then if we want to pursue this mutually, I'll mention this to Ian in terms of how he feels about using a less crunchy technique to get more whole specimens. It's been years since I've talked about compensation, so let me just figure out what others are getting, and if this is in the ballpark, then that's fine. If it's still low, then we can talk about it. I want a Lamborghini. I said I want a Lamborghini.
Don't we all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And in 2015, he published those videos. And since then, pretty much, he has been pursued but legally sued by everybody, but also criminally pursued by none other than who is now the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to see you guys again.
Just mentioned, by the way, earlier, David, that 48 years ago, the Roe v. Wade decision was made. And as we know, President Trump designated that day as National Sanctity of Life Day. What's the legacy of those 48 years? I mean, that's what I want to start with.
I mean, it's always, the anniversary of Roe versus Wade is always an incredibly sobering day for those of us in the United States to mark. Its legacy is a death toll of millions of infant children in the United States, a death toll disproportionately the burden of which is disproportionately shouldered by minority communities in the United States, by African Americans and other survivors of institutional racism in our country and the history of problems like that still persist. The legacy of Roe versus Wade is broken families, broken promises between people in intimate relationships. It's a very ugly legacy, and it's an injustice on an order of magnitude that is hard for any one person to grasp. And to a certain degree, my friend Lila Rose says that we as human beings, like our minds aren't really built to comprehend a tragedy of that magnitude. There's always a light in the darkness, and sometimes the darkness highlights the light that much more brightly. My friend Mark Crutcher from Texas, from the group Life Dynamics, is fond of saying that you look at how bad it is in the United States with, still we have, 600,000 to 800,000 abortions a year still right now, slightly under 1 million. Which is itself a big milestone. For most of my life growing up, when I first started getting involved in pro-life work, and I first started learning about this issue and caring about this issue, the figures were, 1.3 million abortions a year in the United States. And now, we're 500,000 less than that. That's a victory. That's children who are being born who otherwise would have been victimized by the abortion industry. So, just like the proverb that says, if you save one life, it's as if you saved the world. That's something that we should always remember. There are less full-time abortion clinics operating in our country than ever before. Pregnancy resource centers outnumber abortion clinics by something like 3 to 1 still. And what Mark Crutcher says that I think is really, is really worth reflecting on, especially at a big number anniversary, like 48, right? 48 years. Well, still, as bad as it is in the United States, in the Soviet Union, right? In the Soviet Union, Abortion was sort of, the way that it is in New York City or, was in California, maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, totally funded by the government, massively all over the place. In Russia still, you'll talk to women who have had, 7 or 8 abortions in their lifetime, and it was all paid for by the state, sometimes mandated by the communist government. And what Mark says is the big difference, between, why was it so bad in Russia, in Soviet Russia versus in the United States? In large part because there's been a very active and vigorous pro-life movement in the United States of America ever since legal abortion was forced onto the country. There was never permitted to have a pro-life movement like that fighting back and standing up for families and for children in Soviet Russia. But we've had that in the United States, and that is the biggest single difference between abortion in America versus abortion historically in Russia. And that is probably one of the biggest reasons why, still as bad as it is in the United States, in many ways, abortion is sort of it's this sort of like localized parasitic problem that has attached itself to our country and attached itself to our civilization, but it hasn't been able to metastasize throughout the culture the way that it did in a communist country like Soviet Russia. And it's because the pro-life movement has always been there for the past 48 years. So I think that we should take a lot of courage from that. I mean, we should be, resolved and aware of the magnitude of the tragedy, but knowing that we've been fighting this for 48 years. We're good at fighting it. We are saving lives every single day and every single year. We have had big breakthroughs, even amidst the things that are troublesome or difficult. We have, it looks like a 6-3 pro-life majority on the Supreme Court right now, for the first time in history. And it was pointed out just, several months ago, or, in this past year, that there is not a majority of the justices on the Supreme Court who all 5 of them or more agree on what the Constitution actually says about abortion, or what the Supreme Court, what Roe versus Wade even means, or what validity it has for the future of our country. So even that, it's been 48 years since Roe, but a majority of justices on the Supreme Court can't even agree and say this is what Roe versus Wade means or what effect it has on our country anymore. And that itself is a victory too, because it means, I believe that means that Roe versus Wade is basically it is rapidly becoming obsolete. And there's a new reality and a new I think there's going to be a new paradigm that we're moving into.
Well, the pro-abortion forces are very, very powerful. They have tentacles deep in the culture, deep in politics. Deep on your TV screen. We watched a show we talked about last week on the podcast. A show called The Resident. The Good Doctor.
The Good Doctor.
The Good Doctor. And you had a Christian doctor being forced to take part in an abortion, and that's bad, whatever, that was a twist. But then the real twist at the end was that the reason she hesitated over it was because she had made the choice between being a doctor and motherhood, and chosen being a doctor and had an abortion. And as a Christian, she knew that God supported her in that, and that's the kind of message that they're trying to put out. So it's
that's why actually movies like our movie Gosnell were so important. And just when you were talking about yourself and Lila, and about how difficult it is for people to comprehend the numbers of the dead when we come to the numbers of children who have died in abortion in America, these 60, people say 60 million, huge numbers, and I know that they're not always recorded, so we're not even sure.
We know Gosnell did not record the abortions he did, so there's many Gosnells.
But also there's many jurisdictions in America that do not require them to actually number the children. But one thing that I always say to people, and maybe it'll help our audience as well, is that I quote, Schindler's List, the movie Schindler's List, where what they did was they showed a little child with a red coat walking with, her mom or whatever during the beginning of the movie. And at the end of the movie, you saw that red coat in a pile of bodies as a way, and Steven Spielberg did that as a way to make the reality, bring it down to one. And we did that, I suppose, with Gosnell, with baby boy A. But nobody did it more effectively than you, David, with the videos that you shot inside these clinics that will, for everyone who has seen them, will remain with us forever. And everyone, I know everyone that we talk to is so grateful for that work.
To be fair, it wasn't inside the someone was inside the clinic. I think for me, the more dramatic
was at the dinner table.
Was at the dinner table as they crunched their salad and drank their Chardonnay, discussed pricing an arm and pricing a leg and pricing a liver, and how not to do abortions too crunchy to damage the liver and to damage the arms. The buying and selling of babies. But that brings us on then to the Biden Harris and your personal. Willie Brown had many Californians have had interesting liaisons with Kamala Harris. You've had one too. Tell us about the time that Kamala came around to your house at 6 a.m. in the morning.
Or sent her people over.
Yeah, so back before she was de facto president of the United States, and before she was a United States senator, Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the state of California. That basically means that she was the top cop in the state of California. And as the top cop in the state of California, Kamala Harris had been massively supported by Planned Parenthood and their allies, contributing to her campaigns, wanting to make sure that she got in there as the top cop in California to protect their abortion empire in the state of California. So after my undercover videos were first released in the summer of 2015, Planned Parenthood and their leadership went running to Kamala Harris, and they basically said, we need you to make sure that Daleiden isn't reporting anymore, isn't talking anymore, that the videos are not being published. We need you to cover up the whole thing and silence this message, because that's how threatening it is to our abortion business. And Kamala Harris was happy to comply with Planned Parenthood's wishes. Planned Parenthood specifically, explicitly requested that California law enforcement seize my computer and video equipment that I was using to publish the undercover videos. So they did something at Kamala Harris's office in order to comply with Planned Parenthood's request that has never been done before in the 60-year history of the California video recording law. California prohibits recording a confidential conversation, but if it's not a confidential conversation, or if it's being recorded in order to gather evidence of criminality, it's totally permitted by the law in California. Undercover news journalists, local news outlets, CBS Los Angeles, Fox Los Angeles, others regularly do undercover video recording and publish their undercover video reports in the state of California. Never in the 60-year history of the video law in California has a journalist, as an undercover reporter, ever had the video recording law criminally enforced against them. But Kamala Harris and Planned Parenthood decided to weaponize that law to make me the first and only case of that. And her deputy prosecutor, Kamala Harris's deputy prosecutor, has admitted in open court filings that the sole thing that they say distinguishes me from any other undercover reporter in California is the content of the videos, is the content of what I'm publishing. So it's a grotesque admission that this is an entirely unconstitutional, selective and discriminatory weaponization of the law in California, abuse of Kamala Harris's police powers as Attorney General in order to attack and punish and silence a message that she disagreed with, and silence the truth that was threatening to her political backers at Planned Parenthood. They sent 11 California DOJ agents to raid my home in Southern California. They came in, they seized all of my laptops, including stuff going back to high school, journal entries, love letters, all kinds of stuff on there. They turned the whole thing upside down. They flipped through printouts that I had of invoices for baby body parts from Planned Parenthood's business partners, but they did not take those. They did not take the evidence of fetal trafficking to prosecute it. They took the evidence of Planned Parenthood's complicity in order to protect Planned Parenthood. So that's how Kamala Harris functions when she's in a position of power. She is totally shameless about using the powers of her office in order to punish dissent, to silence opinions that she disagrees with, and to protect her political backers regardless of the crime or the cost.
Well, can you update us on where all your different legal cases? Is that criminal case still going? And what about the other criminal cases that you may be facing? And, civil cases?
The cases in Texas were dismissed, but what's the latest with the others?
So as of today, which is in late January here, as of today, the first and only criminal prosecution of a news reporter under the California video recording law, that case that Kamala Harris launched at Planned Parenthood's behest, that case is still going on in the San Francisco State Court. Kamala Harris launched it. Her successor, Javier Becerra, who's now been nominated to lead the Health and Human Services Department on a federal level, he continued it. And now we're going to see what happens. If current trends continue, which is always a big if these days, I think people feel like, but if current trends continue, we're probably going to trial on 7 video recording charges in the state of California. First time anyone has ever stood trial. We'll be going to trial at the end of this year, most likely, in San Francisco.
What about your civil cases?
There's a couple different retaliatory civil lawsuits that Planned Parenthood and their allies at the National Abortion Federation brought. The Planned Parenthood retaliatory lawsuit, that is the one that's sitting in front of Judge Orrick, who is an Obama appointee who actually opened and funded and helped operate a Planned Parenthood abortion referral clinic in San Francisco. So Judge Orrick was literally responsible for opening and promoting and protecting the operations of a Planned Parenthood clinic that was feeding patients into Planned Parenthood's fetal tissue harvesting program with the company STEM Express at Planned Parenthood Northern California. And yet Judge Orrick is the one who they made sure was going to hear the civil cases in the federal courts regarding me and Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood's retaliatory federal civil lawsuit, Judge Orrick gave them a total of about a $16 million total award in that case. That is all up on appeal right now at the federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and that'll probably be, appeals stuff tends to kind of be a slow moving train, but that'll be going on for probably the next couple of years. The National Abortion Federation case has this outrageous gag order over my unreleased undercover footage from the National Abortion Federation's annual meeting trade shows, which are basically abortion industry trade shows. Some of the most shocking and horrifying and damning and incriminating footage that I ever recorded about Planned Parenthood's top level leadership in the abortion industry. That case is in its final stages right now. We're sort of in the big final showdown right now to see what becomes of the case and what becomes of the videos. I don't think anybody really has a lot of faith in Judge Orrick to rule in a fair or unbiased manner. But we're gonna see what happens. I mean, NAF really doesn't have a leg to stand on. They are basically running a giant price fixing operation for the abortion industry. They have a big trade show where they bring together all the competitors and all the different clinics and all the different aspects of the abortion industry, and they try and say that they should be totally secret to plot in secret what how they're going to game out their business relationships with each other, and how they're going to basically defraud the public into supporting the abortion industry at best, and commit outrageously criminal acts like trafficking aborted infants for money at worst. So we'll see what happens there. That case will be wrapping up in the next month or so, and then and then we'll see what happens. Then we're also fighting back. I have a big federal civil rights act lawsuit against Kamala Harris and against Planned Parenthood, against the National Abortion Federation and the Attorney General of California for conspiring to weaponize the California video recording law to attack my First Amendment civil rights. So that case, through a lot of gamesmanship, they got that in front of Judge Orrick as well. But for the reasons I just stated, he's completely disqualified to hear a case like that because of his direct interest and involvement in the activity at issue here. So we'll see where that goes. I'm certainly not afraid of the fight. It's a fight worth having, and it's a fight that's going to be had in public, and everyone, the whole world, will see how these issues are being treated by the court system in California. And then there's a couple of defamation lawsuits that we've brought, one against Planned Parenthood for claiming that I fabricated the video footage evidence, even though their own leadership admitted under oath in Judge Oreck's courtroom that the videos are true. So there's a defamation case against them. There's a defamation case against one of the Planned Parenthood abortion doctors in Colorado for writing a memoir accusing me of having fabricated and dubbed in the undercover footage. Completely outrageous. So we're excited to prove that in a court of law.
It's all court case after court case, and responding to this litigation and these criminal accusations. I mean, it's a full-time job. One thing we wanted to ask you, by the way, because our supporters have asked us this, and friends have asked us this, how can people help you? What kind of help do you need right now, David?
So we need a couple of things. Number one, the most important thing is we need to keep the focus on these issues. It's a great time to think about that and renew that, and in the time of the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. This problem is not going away. Fetal trafficking is still a huge problem. Sadly, the Trump administration did not solve this problem. And the more that we learn about it, the more and more horrific it gets. The news has just broken in the past month about these barbaric experiments being done at the University of Pittsburgh. Talk about a part two to the Kermit Gosnell case, where at the taxpayer-funded University of Pittsburgh, scientists have been using federal taxpayer research grants to scalp aborted infants, 5-month-old aborted infants. They scalp them, they take the scalps off of their heads, and they take the skin off of their backs. They call it full thickness fetal skin, meaning that they take all the layers of the skin, but they say they have to scrape the excess baby fat off of it before stitching it onto lab rats to test different skin infection drugs. And so this is the kind of barbaric, Kermit Gosnell was just keeping the baby parts in jars in his clinic. Planned Parenthood and the University of Pittsburgh traffic them and then use them to get multi-million-dollar taxpayer-funded grants from the National Institutes of Health and from the federal government.
So we got to keep people focused on these stories. And you said there was something else.
Yes.
What else can we do to help?
Yes. Like and share the videos. You can contribute to my work at centerformedicalprogress.org. There's quite a few more videos that we're excited to put out to keep the focus on these issues in 2021. So stay tuned. We're going to have a lot more coming in the next year.
And we'll put that website up. It's centerformedicalprogress.org to help David out with his amazing work. And David, we want you to keep us in the loop as you go forward with these different legal challenges, legal battles, because our audience would definitely like to be, and we would really like to be kept updated on what's going on. But thank you so much for your time today. You're doing amazing work, and we are so true journalism, and there's so little of that.
You guys are too. It's always great to come on.
Well, in a proper world, you'd be winning all kinds of journalism awards, and you know that. But it was great to have you. Thanks so much, David.
Thanks, David. Bye.
Thank you.
That's great that we were able to get him to come on today. But in other news, Keystone.
Well, I mean, we talked about a political education. I think
it's interesting to know what happened here, first of all, with Keystone. So the Keystone Pipeline has been just scuppered. The whole plan is gone. The Keystone XL Pipeline between Canada and the United States, which was going to be this extraordinary, amazing piece of infrastructure, has now been just completely
and the
scuppered.
Keystone Pipeline brings in oil from Canada, from the oil sands projects there. So it's another way of making sure that America is not dependent upon Saudi oil, is not dependent upon Iranian oil, is not dependent upon Russian oil or Venezuelan oil. It's, energy independence is one of those things people talk about, but it's a truly, there are many reasons why there was no wars in the last 4 years under President Trump. One is President Trump had an America First policy, but also people cannot hold America hostage now by withholding oil. So America has no interest in these places other than, and that's why they were able to shift to promoting Israel, promoting the only democracy in the Middle East. So Biden, first 100 days, he has scuppered and banned, I suppose, the Keystone Pipeline. And the union leaders are all, oh, this is terrible, 12,000 jobs. And, liars. They are liars. And I've said this all along. And by the way, Conservatives need to stop taking the side of union leaders in this. The union leaders have sat by and said nothing when people have been pushing climate change nonsense for 20 years. And we've been here before. I remember sitting in rooms with oil companies, when we showed the film, at events and that, and we'd meet these PR people and they say, well, we got this and we got that and we got the union on board. And, next thing their project is cancelled. And I'm going, where was the union? And if you search somewhere deep in the internet, somewhere the union might have issued a press release about it. But they never fought for it. They never protest. They never gave money to candidates supporting the project. And the reason is union leaders are not welders or fitters or that. They are political activists. Tomorrow they could be leading a Democrat PAC. They could be leading Planned Parenthood. They could be leading they could be leading an environmental organ. It could be that you could go from the head of the union to the head of Sierra Club. These are all Democratic activist positions to promote the Democratic agenda. So they don't care about their workers. They care about promoting the wider Democrat agenda. So the pipe fitters, union
of plumbers and pipe fitters. These are the same people who endorsed Joe Biden in 2020 and now are coming out saying, "Oh, this is all. We're not going to." So what they had originally said when they endorsed Joe Biden was, "We're not going to sit on the sidelines at the UA. This endorsement is about putting UA members to work and fighting for fair wages and good benefits." And then just flash forward, to just last week, to this recent decision in revoking this XL pipeline permit. The Biden administration
this is a lie.
Has chosen to listen to the voice of fringe activists instead of union members and the American consumer. On day one, let me be very clear, when built with union labour by the men, whatever. Anyway, on and on and on. But basically, they've had this complete about-face. Did they just get a sudden education, Phelim?
It was clear that Biden was going to be pushing the climate agenda from day one. That they were going to be pushing the Paris Accord. That they were going to do these kind of,
That's right. It wasn't. They didn't hide that.
No, they didn't hide it, and they're going to go after fracking, and they're going to destroy your members' workplace. But don't worry, you will still be paid, union leaders, and you will still get your good job as the head of the Democratic Party in Ohio, or on the Democratic Party national executive. Don't worry, you can switch from these Democrat administrative jobs from one to the other. No problem. You'll be on the board of NBC. Don't worry, you'll be fine, and you know that. But your workers who are welders cannot do that, and you don't care about them because you have, let's be honest, a wider agenda, a bigger agenda, and that's all you care about. So Conservatives need to stop pretending that the union leaders are in shock about this. They are not. This is part of their plan.
Yeah. And, we've had this, a lot of people talked when President Biden would become president that, we needed a time of unity. People needed to get back to civility. And it's interesting, just a few people, we've noticed not an awful lot of civility around, by the way, not a lot of it at all. So Stephen King, famous Stephen King novelist, Kayleigh McEnany had tweeted out, this is Kayleigh McEnany, of course, the wonderful press secretary for the Trump administration. Serving as press secretary has been a true honour. At the podium, I had the great privilege of sharing stories of the forgotten men and women of America, stories the media too often ignores. How did Stephen King react to that? He says, enjoy your next job as a cocktail waitress in Tampa. I don't think that's very civil, Phelim, is it?
I don't think it's a...
And it's also kind of like, sorry, this is a woman who had this incredibly powerful position. Are we allowed to speak like that about women? Is that not misogynistic? Is that not?
I just
Where is
get
he
confused.
celebrating women here? No?
All women's voices matter or something like that. Yeah.
But that's not the worst, actually. The worst, I think, even worse than that, is Tim Madison,
Who's he now?
So he's an actor he was in National Lampoon's Animal House apparently in 1978, but he's most well known, and we certainly know him best. He played the vice president in The West Wing.
John Hoynes.
I'm
just looking at his picture now. Yeah, he's in everything.
He's in everything.
He's in everything.
And he got 2 Primetime Emmy Awards and all of that. So here's what he tweeted out at the departure of President Trump from the White House. And the arrival of Biden and Dr. Jill Biden. So wonderful to have a First Lady with class and heart and can speak English. So civility, decency.
Immigrants.
So that's anti-immigrant.
Yes.
And I mean, does he say that to the people who clean his house? Does he say things like, which he doesn't speak English very well? I mean, does he speak like that about the immigrants that work for him? I bet he has loads of immigrants working in his house, by the way. Does he speak like that generally about women? Now, he apologised afterwards, but you know what? It doesn't really matter because...
But imagine if he said that in NBC.
Oh, yeah, to some woman who was cleaning, that hairdresser back there doesn't clean very well.
But even, I'm sure, what if he has people, immigrants in his writing team?
Oh,
but
yeah.
of course, by the way, these people never have immigrants in the writing team. That's the reality. Only when they've suddenly realised. You often, back in the day, they used to publish pictures of, here's the writing team. They stopped doing it recently because they're all
the same colour.
They're all whitey McWhitey.
Whitey McWhitey. And then just to round it off, because you need 3 of things, maybe not. Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, just the man of the people, right? He's just one of ourselves, we're all in this together. Not really, actually, Jimmy. No, we're not all in this together. And he wrote, "It feels good." This is again on Twitter. Yeah. This is why Twitter is awful. "It feels good to only have to worry about a deadly pandemic now." So, tone deaf a little bit. I mean, people really came after him for that. That he now, we only have to worry about a deadly pandemic. He was so happy that Trump had left the White House. We don't have to worry about a deadly pandemic. Well, actually, Jimmy, people are worried about a lot of things. Thousands and thousands of workers, for example, who are out of work because of the XL pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
Parents of children, we're going to get onto this, by the way, in a minute, what's been happening in schools across the country, really horrible tragedy. Awful situation going on with school closures and what's happening with children, suicidal problems with children. Restaurants that are closed, people who have lost their businesses, people who are chronically out of work. But you don't have anything to worry about, Jimmy, because you're lovely and wealthy and your life's great. And the only thing that ever upset you was that Trump was the president. Well, you got it all your own way now.
Yeah.
But I think you've also shown the whole world exactly how out of touch you are and how tone deaf you are. And a lot of people wrote, here's one guy who wrote and said, "It's very difficult to express what a privileged, out of touch take this is." But that's Hollywood, that's celebrities for you.
Yeah.
That's leftists. So we come to COVID, and we have a COVID update. Obviously, we were just saying earlier that,
Yes.
Here in California, as usual, by the way, it's as clear as muck. But one of the things I loved about this new COVID situation is that Gavin Newsom and the people, now they've decided to open everything up. But one of the things that people had asked for, including, by the way, the Associated Press, they asked for the data that California was using to make the decisions they were making. And these are decisions that are destroying people's lives. Like, these are big, massive decisions. And California told the people of California, do you know something? You're too stupid to understand the data, so we're not going to release it. It would only confuse you.
That's right.
It would only confuse you. And by the way, Californians are stupid enough, by the way, to take that.
Yes.
It seems like. Although maybe not. I think one of the things that maybe has affected Gavin Newsom's decision to reopen California from this awful lockdown we've had is that on the last look I had, they have 1.2 million signatures on a recall for Gavin Newsom. People want to take him out of the governor's office because of how he has been through COVID.
We always said that once Biden gets elected, the pandemic would be cured and things would open up. Then, to be honest, it did look like they had got so drunk on their power that they were actually enjoying it. And a number of these governors were saying, we'll keep it closed a bit longer because I love being a capricious tyrant. But I'll tell you, Gavin Newsom, I think it's been a combination of all those forces, the recall effort and the demand for the data that he is not prepared to give. Because I would suspect They haven't even
bothered collecting it
or compiled it, or because do you remember when the judge said to them, "What's your data for banning outdoor dining?"
That's right.
After 8 months of this pandemic, and they said, "We don't have any." And the judge said, "Well, if you don't have any, you can't close outdoor dining."
That's right.
So I would imagine they don't have any data or any rules for reopening. That's why they're reopening, in the hope that the pressure will go away. And also, they wanted to destroy the economy, to destroy Trump. Biden got in, and now they can reopen the economy. These are bad people.
These are really bad people. And in other COVID news, and this is very, very sad COVID news, and this is a story from the New York Times, but it's kind of everywhere. Suicide among young people during the pandemic is soaring, and this is particularly happening. One particular story that I'm looking at here is about Nevada, about Las Vegas. And it's just so sad. The headline is "Surge of Student Suicide Pushes Las Vegas Schools to Reopen." So in Clark County, which is I think the 5th largest school district in the United States.
That's in Nevada?
In Nevada. This is Las Vegas.
Yeah.
18 suicides of children over 9 months of closure is double the number that they had last year.
The entire last year.
The entire of last year. So 18 over 9 months is more than twice what it was in 12 months last year. Yeah. And this is the most, for anyone, this is very upsetting stuff. I'm going to warn you, really. One student left a note saying he had nothing to look forward to. The youngest student who lost his life was 9. And it's not just in Nevada. And there's a case I came across yesterday. You know, when you start looking at stuff and you go down a particular rabbit hole and it ends up in an awful place. The New York Times referred to a case in Texas, an incredibly tragic case that has now become a viral, sort of a viral story that's gone everywhere. And it's about a boy, a 12-year-old boy
from
Aledo, Texas, who died by suicide last month. And his father, was very brave. His father decided that he would go and, make a video, talk about what had happened, to try and help other people, and maybe to try and warn other people, particularly people who have children at home, to be really on the lookout for certain signs from children that they're not doing well, that they're not surviving. He said about his kid, Brad Constable said about his kid, this kid loved life. There's 2 videos that I would ask you to look up, and one of them, they've made a documentary about this little guy, and it's called Almost 13.
Isolation has created what I believe and what I worry and what I'm warning every parent in America tonight. An emotional tsunami that is sweeping this nation, and I'm very concerned about it.
The next health crisis, triggered by COVID-19, may actually be a wave of suicides.
Suicide rates are at the highest since World War II.
The government has only given about $500 million to this mental health problem, whereas they've given $16 billion to the airline industry.
41 days ago, my young 12-year-old boy, 3 days before his 13th birthday, took his life. The second leading cause of death in the United States for 10 to 14-year-olds is suicide. The second leading cause of death of 15 to 24-year-olds is suicide. 25 to 34-year-olds is suicide.
It's a new bubble out. Her name is Chihuahua. Yeah. Oh my God. It was over there on the wall.
Hey, smile good. There you go. Everybody smile nice.
The father says, I know this. My son would be alive if he was in school. He didn't like the isolation. He didn't like being at home. And you should watch the documentary. They're a beautiful family. He didn't like being at home. He loved being at home, but you know what I mean? He didn't like, and the father has done 2 videos. He did one that went viral, and then there's the documentary. We'll put up links to both, and we're going to probably show a little clip from one of them. It's very, very tough going, I'll have to tell you. It's very, very tough going. And as the father said, COVID-19 killed Brad's son, but not the way you think. And there's an 11-minute video. You can go, as I said, we'll put the 2 links up in the notes. But it's interesting that in Nevada, they've decided enough is enough, and they've reopened the schools. But you'll remember before, when we were doing the Daily Virus, we talked about Fairfax County in Virginia, which is one of the richest counties in the United States of America, which is saying something, yes. Right? And it has almost the worst results for children who are at school in Fairfax County. And when I say at school, I mean remote learning in Fairfax County.
Well, most results
worst
in the world, in America?
In America, almost the worst in America. Very, very, very bad. Children failing multiple subjects. And we know a lot about that. And however, into this, just to show a contrast between the union, or the teachers, I should say anyway, in Las Vegas, who have decided enough is enough and they're going back to school. The teachers in Fairfax County, by the way, who know all of this information, that these children are suffering this all over the country. Yeah. It's not about being in Vegas. It's not about this poor little fellow down in Texas. This is happening all over the country. But the Fairfax County Teachers Union have come out and said, we will not go back to school unless, and by the way, sorry, I should back up and say that Governor Northam of Virginia has said, we've checked out all the data, it's safe to go back to school. And as we know, infection rates from children are extremely rare, extremely low. It's very safe once you have the precautions and the very little precautions, by the way, that they have, that are necessary. It's very easy to go back to school, basically. But no, in Fairfax County, the teachers are saying, no, we're not going back unless every child and every teacher has been vaccinated. And they know that in the tiering system for vaccinations, that is not happening anytime soon. So it's two very different...
So children won't be vaccinated until late this year or ever, next year.
There's no... Well, actually, by the way, even to on top of that, I'm going to try and find this piece here. One of the main vaccines, actually Pfizer's vaccine, is only authorized for use on children, on adults. It's only authorized for use on adults over the age of 16.
And Moderna is only available to those over 18.
So basically the viruses aren't available, the vaccines aren't available for children.
Yeah. So basically they're saying we're never going back, but we're still getting paid and the children can go to hell. That's what they're saying. They don't care about children. They only,
It's just terrible. We're just going to watch a tiny piece of this video now of the father of this lovely boy that lost his life, Hayden Hunstable, and it's Brad Hunstable, on the tragic death of his son Hayden. Let's have a little listen to that.
Day 2 since I buried my son. My son died from the coronavirus, as I mentioned, but not in the way you think. The human condition is not to be socially isolated. And I heard someone say, well, it's like summer for these kids. It's not like summer for these kids. It's just not. Anybody says it's an idiot. This is not summer. You have parents who are stressed out because they lost their jobs. That's not like summer. You got kids who have no interaction with their friends other than through Fortnite and FaceTime. That's not like summer. You have kids who can't go run off their energy at PE class. They can't get that one hug from their teacher that they needed. There's social and emotional challenges beyond comprehension.
So that's what the unions are colluding in. That's what they're going to have blood on their hands.
Shame on you, all the teachers who won't go back to work and unions that are making these impossible demands. Children, this is unfair. I think we made the point earlier. This is not like closing down Ralph's. This is not like closing down Nordstrom's. I can go somewhere else for that. If you close down Vaughn's, if you close down Whole Foods, we can go somewhere else. There are other grocery stores. Parents don't have any choice. They've nowhere else to go. They need this. These schools, these children deserve this. They need this.
Yeah.
And teachers have a responsibility to do their jobs and to protect these children.
And it doesn't matter. It's not right if you're in a charter school or in a private school. The governor has said everyone has to close, even if they want to open. So it's.
That was in California, exactly. But I mean, in the case of, as I said, in the case of Virginia, Governor Northam is saying open up, and individual teachers, individual teachers or unions are saying no. And as you say, eventually, because Virginia has been closed up until now with no plans of reopening.
Unbelievable.
And now, in our next story today, Mark Stein. What's been happening with Mark Stein?
Who moved my hockey stick? Well.
So you remind us about. Everyone knows who Mark Stein is, but remind us about Mark Stein's relationship with Michael Mann of Penn University of Pennsylvania, Penn State.
So, Mark Stein, you probably know him from the Tucker Carlson show. You probably know him from a stand-in guest host on the Rush Limbaugh show. He's a great friend of ours. We've been on his show.
And we've been on all his cruises,
yes,
including the next one.
Yes, and I want to talk to people about that. Let's go on that cruise. Let's get out there. So you may not know that for 8 years now, so he has been the subject of a lawsuit from Professor Michael Mann of Penn State University. Mann is one of the most extreme climate alarmists and a thug, actually. And he almost Mann would admit to that himself. He believes this is a war against, as he calls, denialists. And he takes a very unscientific approach to this. But so Mark Stein, you'll remember that there was the Penn State sexual abuse case, Jerry Sandusky, and the university employed the former director of the FBI, Louis Freeh, to do an independent investigation into how they handled those allegations. And his report was damning, and it said that the president, Graham Spanier, basically did not follow up on complaints in his urge to avoid bad publicity for the university.
Unbelievable.
Spanier has since been charged and convicted of child endangerment and is about to be sentenced and go to prison. Right? So,
who's Spanier again?
The president of Penn State.
Wow.
Okay, he's been convicted of child endangerment. So, Michael Mann works for Penn State, and there was a whole remember the ClimateGate emails came out that showed them colluding both to get rival scientists fired, to hide data,
hide the decline
in temperatures, to delete emails, encouraging others to delete emails, and encouraging people to get fired from boards of magazines to stop rival scientists from getting published that might question their research. Basically, thugs. So, Penn State, when these emails emerged, Penn State had a report, ordered an investigation, just like as they should have, and the investigation cleared Michael Mann. So Michael Mann is the lead guy there. He is famous for the hockey stick graph, which showed there was flat temperatures in the world until basically the Industrial Revolution, and then it shot up like a hockey stick.
And that graph, that hockey stick graph, that famous hockey stick graph, was basically the poster child for all of these regulations, all of this incredible stuff that's changed the economy. And by the way, the IPCC report
put it on the front page.
Put it on the front page of the report.
They literally put it on the front page.
It became everything.
The reason the Keystone Pipeline is cancelled is because of the hockey stick graph that showed no change in temperature for thousands of years and then shot up.
Yes.
So Mark made the point in a blog in National Review, right, that and he points out that Rand Simberg of the CEI said, that there was a culture of rape at the university, that it was covered up by the university, and so Mark in his blog quotes Rand Simberg and says, now we know how bad it was. Perhaps it's time. They had an independent investigation into Michael Mann's, into these emails, and into his unscientific approach, and cleared Michael Mann completely, except for one thing, and then they did a further investigation into that one point, and that cleared him as well. So he was completely cleared. And Rand Simberg, as quoted by Mark, says, we should revisit the Michael Mann affair, particularly given how much we've learned. And Simberg says, Mann could be said to be the Jerry Sandusky of climate science, except that instead of molesting children, he has molested and tortured data in the service. A service of politicized science that could have dire economic consequences for the nation and planet. So Mark then responds to that and says, not sure I would have extended the metaphor all the way into the locker room showers with that kind of zeal. Oof. But he says he does have a point. Michael Mann was the man behind the fraudulent climate change hockey stick graph, the ringmaster of the three-ring circus, and when they investigated, the college declined to find one of its star names guilty of any wrongdoing. And Mark makes the point, if an institution is prepared to cover up systemic statutory rape of minors, what won't it cover up? Whether or not he's the, quote, Jerry Sandusky of climate change, he remains the Michael Mann of climate change, in part because his investigation by a deeply corrupt administration was a joke. I think most people in the world would say, right, look, if you're an organization that's going to cover up child rape, what wouldn't you cover up? So therefore, every investigation you've ever done is questionable.
It's questionable.
Michael Mann sued for libel and slander, and defamation. And
8 years ago.
8 years ago, and has been, there's been one delay after another. And as Mark Stein does say, the process is the punishment in American courts.
Exactly, because during this 8 years, Mark obviously has to have a legal team. He's paying lawyers.
Millions.
It's incredible. So this is a horrible. This is just horrible, and it's unjust. By the way, there's no justice in 8 years.
No, it's not. That is the punishment. So they've had depositions now, many weeks of depositions. They've had discovery. Some very interesting things have come out in discovery and in the deposition. And basically, Mark has now filed a motion to dismiss because saying the case is baseless. And just to give you a sense of the motion to dismiss, he says Michael Mann's ill-conceived and baseless 8-year-old libel suit against Mark Stein has gone on long enough. Discovery, now over, has shown this suit is not about defamation, nor is it, as this court has ruled, defamation, nor, as this court has ruled, is it about climate change or science. It's basically a way of shutting down the debate. So, let's be clear. So when Free investigated Sandusky, he found that it was only a fear of bad publicity that meant they were they did not put this guy in prison. They did not report him to the authorities. And don't forget, Spanier is convicted of child endangerment and is awaiting a jail sentence. So we're going to put this motion to dismiss up on our website. There's 2 parts of it. It's wonderful. He devastates the hockey stick. So the hockey stick, Michael Mann does not have a degree in statistics, as his motion says, and they use no statisticians to make the hockey stick. They just made it themselves. 3 climate scientists, and they had a thing where they put in a data normalization procedure, which is a scientific thing. You normalize the data, you try and meld it so that things, outliers are brought in. And as one of their other scientists said, Dr. Richard Muller in the MIT Technology Review said the hockey stick's data normalization procedure was, quote, mistaken and tends to emphasize any data that will to produce a hockey stick and to suppress all data that does not. Of course, we know this story really well because in our documentary, Not Evil, Just Wrong, we wrote about the hockey stick, or we featured the hockey stick. We featured McIntyre and McKittrick, 2 Canadian individuals. One's a scientist, the other isn't. The other is a genius who just noticed. He's a genius investor, and he says, what caught my eye was, in the investing world, you don't see a lot of hockey sticks in the science world, right? But you see them all the time in the investing world, and they're kind of a joke in the investing world.
Yeah, it's like, no growth now, but you give us the money, we're going to be
3 years of no growth, but then on the 4th year you're going to be a millionaire, and it's like
zillionaire.
And it's become a joke in the investing world if it's a hockey stick, and they looked at the normalization procedure and they put in basically the contents of the Toronto phone book, and they got a hockey stick. So any kind of data that you put in there would give you a hockey stick. And Mann was charged with 4 different counts actually, and of suppressing information, bad science, encouraging the deletion of emails. So Ann, I have a question for you. So this is a major investigation into, and here's what he was charged with actually. Based on the ClimateGate emails released in 2009, Penn State brought 4 charges against Mann. 1, actions with intent to suppress or falsify data, quote, and then second one, actions directly or indirectly with the intent to delete emails, and misuse of privileged or confidential information, and 4, actions that seriously deviated from accepted practices within the academic community. So very, very serious allegations against their star scientist. How long do you think the inquiry went on, and how many witnesses do you think they had at the inquiry over?
At Penn State?
Yes.
Oh, I'd say they spent at least an hour. At least an hour.
How many witnesses do you think they had?
None. 1. Him. Really? I'm not right, am I?
You're right.
Are you serious?
Yes.
And how long did it go on for?
You know what?
I kind of worried there because I thought I've over-exaggerated this now. Oh, wow. They had only one witness.
The inquiry committee, as a committee, interviewed only one witness, Dr. Michael Mann.
Wow.
So they asked him for his answers, and he gave them.
Yes, and they were satisfied.
And they were the committee did not interview a single witness that was critical of Dr. Mann. And so, I mean, it goes on. Like they even then they issued a 2-page report that mostly exonerated him, but for on the 4th count they said need further investigation, right? But still, many of the people in the inquiry said this is not an exoneration. We basically don't have the knowledge or information that we can actually make a point. So one member of the committee sent it to a member outside the committee, who then sent it to the president of the university, who then said, if you go ahead with this will be a disaster for the university. It will give succor to people who want to attack us. And Professor Spanier, in fact,
that's a name we recognize,
urged Dr. Foley to take into account international media attention and the firestorm from elected officials and the consequences to the reputation of the university and its leadership.
Wow.
And and said, if you go out with these findings, we will be blasted if they only say what is here. The world is watching, and we have to be brave. This is Spanier. This is the president, right? So this is the guy who then later was found to have been involved in covering up child rapes. Told them to make the changes. They did. They still went ahead. So basically, the process, they exonerated Michael Mann on the instructions of Spanier, who is not. I mean, actually, Mark Stein was 100% correct, even though he was guessing it at the time that the university that would cover up child rape would cover up. But he didn't. I don't think he actually knew that the person who was involved in covering up child rape was the same person who was involved in the cover-up of the Michael Mann inquiry.
I think we're going to hear a lot more about
that.
Yes,
no, I mean, it goes on. I just want to read the last line, I think, the last, the farewell. In conclusion, this, it's basically saying this lawsuit should be dismissed against defendant Stein. His blog post was substantially true and without malice. It is protected commentary on a matter of public importance. And boy, do we know that this is a matter of public importance, because this is why Keystone has happened. This is why your gas price is going to go up this year. This is why you're probably going to be involved in another war in the next 4 or 10 years, because they're going to try and ban fracking, and we're going to have to import oil from Saudi Arabia, Iran, from bad people, from Africa, from all these unstable, undemocratic regimes, instead of using ethical oil from America and ethical oil from Canada.
Exactly.
It's important. We're going to be putting this. Listen, it's a page turner, this lawsuit. I was struggling. I've got all these pages here that I wasn't able to read because we're running out of time. But we're going to put it up on the website. We're going to be putting clips up on the Twitter feed, AP_Scoop. We're going to be doing a lot about this in the next few days.
Yeah. Okay. And we're going to go now to Yvonne. We're going to talk to Yvonne.
So yes, we're joined now by Yvonne Dean Bailey, who is our digital marketing director, and. The reason we have Yvonne on is because, as we said, a lot of you out there are tired of the censorship, tired of the deplatforming, tired of the
social media,
anti-democratic activities on social media, but you want to leave these platforms.
Where do you go?
So
we thought we'd speak to the young person.
That's right. Let's start with, say, Twitter, right? So you're on Twitter, you think it's a horrible place, and you think the people who run Twitter are horrible. You think what they did to the president is undemocratic. You think that they're banning people for doing nothing but allowing violence, other people to promote violence. So you want to leave Twitter. What's the alternative? And how do they work?
There are a few alternatives to Twitter right now. Obviously, the most popular out of all of those was Parler, which, unfortunately is no longer with us at the moment. It may come back. It may never come back again. Time will tell. But right now, what I have found is the best.
Sorry, is Parler not back, Yvonne?
Parler is not back. It hasn't been back for a while. And right now that they just lost a court case with Amazon actually. And
I thought the website was back up.
The website is back up, but you can't actually use it. It's just a screen that says, we're so sorry for not being up, and hopefully we'll be back soon.
Oh, right. Well, so I mean, that's good to know, because I actually, when I saw the website is back, I thought so you cannot use Parler now at all.
Basically, right now it's just a static web page saying, we're working on it and hopefully we'll be back up soon. But what I've found so far is the best alternative, and it's not perfect, right? None of these sites are perfect. And that's one of the things that we're really going to struggle with as conservatives. We don't have a lot of conservatives in tech. So when it comes to other options, there aren't a whole lot out there. What I found that's worked the best, with the exception of Parler, is Gab. Gab is a free speech platform. It's set up a lot like Twitter. It's seen a huge influx of users. And right now there's another alternative, which is Clout Hub. It's very slow. Gab is very fast.
Could you spell Gab?
Gab, it's G-A-B, Gab. And they don't have an app, and they don't, but you can still access it from your smartphone. So you just type it in your browser, gab.com, and you can sign up for an account, and you can also do it on your desktop. A few years ago, Gab's actually been around for a while. Apple and Google did the same thing that they did to Parler to Gab. So Gab was able to set up this infrastructure in case something like this happens. And of course it did happen.
And are there lots of people subscribed to Gab?
There's a good amount. I mean, right now, if you're looking for the feel of Twitter, there's really nothing else, because Parler is no longer with us at the moment. If Parler comes back, I would probably recommend Parler over Gab, but we got to work with what we have.
You were also saying Parler wasn't perfect either. Is that right?
The reality is, if you're looking for an experience just like Twitter that's not, run by leftists, you're not going to find it. You can find some sites that are similar, which, would be Gab or Parler. I would probably recommend Parler over Gab, just because there are more people on it. There are more big accounts. And if you're looking for, conservative commentary, all the big guys are on there. I think if Parler doesn't come back, which, I'm not sure it will, I think people will start migrating to Gab a lot more, because it just works so quickly. You can upload videos. You can do basically all the same stuff you can do on Twitter, which is great.
What about WhatsApp? People are trying to get off WhatsApp, and people are talking about Telegram. Tell us about Telegram.
Telegram is very interesting. There are two apps that are very similar to each other, kind of, which is Telegram and Signal. I prefer Telegram. I think it's a bit more secure, and it's great for secure messaging. So if you want to send a message to a friend, but you don't want to text them, Telegram is perfect. It's also a really good replacement for Facebook Messenger. It lets you upload videos very quickly, images, high resolution. And the other cool thing about Telegram is they have these things called Telegram channels, which is really great for one-sided communication, if that makes sense. So I'll use Project Veritas as an example. Project Veritas has a ton of content, a ton of followers, and they're able to post updates very quickly into a Telegram channel. As a user like me, you can't comment typically, but it's good for keeping in touch with people for big accounts. So we'll probably have one of those in the future. We don't have one now, but for our next project, we definitely will.
Yes,
I wonder what that next project could be. We need to talk about that.
Are there any other platforms we should know about, or we should be letting people know about?
So one of them. So obviously, a lot of people are on Facebook. People like Facebook. I'm not sure people like Facebook. People feel obligated to be on Facebook. Yes. To connect with loved ones and that sort of thing. There is an alternative that's a little controversial. It's called MeWe. You might have heard a lot of your friends joining it. A lot of my friends are on it. It's not the greatest for censorship though, and they're actually coming under fire because they're deleting a lot of voter fraud content. So MeWe is better than Facebook, I would say, in terms of censorship, but it's not perfect still. YouTube. People are looking for an alternative to YouTube, and there are so many good YouTube alternatives out there. What comes to mind for me are Rumble and Library. Rumble, if you're looking for all of the great like conservative commentators, they're all on Rumble. And I would really recommend checking that out. You can find a lot, Dan Bongino, One American News, and Library is another alternative to YouTube. And it's in the very young stages, but it's very cool. And it actually allows you to tip content creators with crypto, which is kind of cool. So both of those are excellent alternatives to YouTube. I used to be a big fan of BitChute, but it's a little clunky and it's a little slow. Rumble and Library are very fast and highly recommend them.
So what we're going to do is we're going to put, because I know that's a lot of information people got just right there, we're going to put all of the information about all of those various alternative platforms. We're going to put them in the show notes on the YouTube, on our YouTube channel where you're watching this this program right now. And so people can click on those and sign up for those alternatives.
But basically the take home is there's something out there, but it's not perfect and it's not going to give you what you got. Anyway, how much of that is that these companies are established and have money and the rivals are not established and do not have money? I mean, do you think that as more people join,
they're going to get better?
I think that there are a few issues here. The biggest one is we don't have a lot of conservatives in tech. Typically, conservatives, if they want to work in conservative politics, go more towards the policy side of things or the writing side of things. But we need more, software engineers and those kind of folks who agree with us to start creating these platforms. So, I mean, part of it, I think, is talent. But also, of course, part of it's money. I'll use Gab as an example. Gab started, I think, in 2017 or 2018. And I remember when I worked for Project Veritas, we were thinking of getting on Gab. And I mean, just in a few years, it's been 3 years now, it's gotten so much better. So a lot of it is time. And of course, a lot of it is money. Like very few of these are public companies. I know MeWe is, which could be why they started censoring. So it's kind of, once you go big, sometimes you go woke. So fingers crossed, but we need more alternatives for sure.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to check in with you from time to time, Yvonne, on these developments and on these different platforms. But for now, at least we have some alternatives, some other places to go for people who are really sick and tired of the censorship at Facebook and Twitter and all these other places. So thank you very much, Yvonne, for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Bye. That was really great.
And informative. Yeah. So don't forget, as we mentioned a few times, we'll put all the information on the YouTube channel.
Yes. We're very grateful to Yvonne.
Is that some kind of weird internet thing where you put on the YouTube channel the alternatives to YouTube?
Like yeah, that's funny. People seem to know, but people are doing that though, by the way. It's kind of weird actually. I see people advertising for other platforms on Twitter, and Twitter obviously doesn't seem to have a problem with, because of course Twitter, they're so into free speech really, aren't they?
Yeah.
Not. So we're coming to the end of the show. One thing we wanted to mention, by the way, is that we will be going on the Mark Stein cruise, please God. October 2021, the last cruise obviously was cancelled. But I think you guys would really enjoy it. We're going to be with Douglas, the great Douglas Murray, and with Conrad Black, Lord Black and his wife.
And Mark, of course.
And of course, Mark Stein, which is what it's all about. It's in the Mediterranean.
It's when is it?
It's in October, and that's we'll put it in the notes. But it's in October 2021. We went the last one of these that they had. We went where did we go? Oh, I know. We went to the inward passageway or whatever through Canada. Fabulous. And what was most fabulous, by the way, was the 500 people who turned up for Mark Stein's cruise, and who were it was like a kind of a reunion of a club that you were never part of it in the first place, kind of thing, but that you were really glad that
it's the Mark Stein Club. So you find out more details on Stein online, but we'll be posting those details on the YouTube channel.
But do come and join us. It'll be fun.
We've got a lot of good reviews recently, so we really appreciate good reviews. Reviews. So don't forget to leave your comments in the YouTube under the YouTube video, but also go on the podcast app on your phone. And here's one that just came in. I look for the input and opinions of Phelim and Ann, and I quote them often. And this is from Revisit. There are observances and views of what's going on in the world and how it affects us is spot on! Exclamation point! Exclamation point!
Thank you.
Their natural injection of humour stems from their intelligence and unique relationship.
Oh, that's one word for it.
Okay. I'm so looking forward to their project on Hunter Biden, and so are we.
Yes.
And then Carl wrote, really enjoy your podcast. Wish you all will continue to offer it daily.
Oh.
True, Carl. True.
True, Carl.
Yes.
Yes, we're busy. We've got a lot going on here.
Yes. We're focusing on the Hunter Biden project, which
you're going to love.
I think you're going to love. And then someone else says, how in the world, this is DJ from Pittsburgh, how in the world am I going to do without this insanity with just a weekly podcast? How is he going to deal with the world's insanity with just a weekly podcast?
Oh.
I'm missing the Daily Virus and I'm very excited to learn about your new project. Can you please drop a reminder on how I can contribute financially to the show?
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Funny you should mention that.
Funny you should mention that, and thank you for mentioning that. You go to the Unreported Story Society, unreportedstorysociety.com, and click on the donate button, and all donations are to our 501c3. They are tax deductible, and we are really grateful. So it's unreportedstorysociety.com. That's coming up on the screen as well. But that's it for this week. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in and keeping us sane in these insane times. We look forward to seeing you next week.
We're heading off, aren't we?
We're heading off. We're going to be in Florida this week, meeting some important people to talk about important things, and we will report back on the free state and brave state of Florida after lockdown California.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye.